Hey there. Welcome to the Pine Island Experience podcast. I'm Joanna Anderson with my husband, Trygve. Each of our episodes will be conversations with fellow Pine Islanders.
The goal of our podcast is to share with you our experiences, what we have found to be fun, and what makes the Pine Island experience so unique.
But, the nice thing about doing public art also, one of the nice things is that a lot of times people don't get to see art being made. They go to a gallery or a museum and they see finished artwork, but they don't really see what it is, like how it's done. And there are people who just like to see how do you do it, which is cool. I totally get that. It's like I'm fascinated with writing music, people who create music and how'd they write that song that I've heard 1,000 times? What went into that? Same kind of thing.
You just heard Pine Island fine artist Roland Ruocco describing an advantage of public art in that it allows people to see art actually being created. Roland uses a diverse array of media and artistic styles with his goal to create beautiful and thought-provoking artworks. And now, here is Roland. We have with us today Roland Ruocco from Pine Island, artist. Everybody knows you on the island because of all your beautiful murals. Welcome. Thanks for coming. We've been looking forward to this.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to meet with you and speak about my work. I really appreciate the opportunity to do that. And firstly, I'd like to start off with expressing my appreciation for all the people and businesses that have commissioned me to do paintings and artwork in their buildings and facilities and homes, and just giving me an opportunity to do what I feel is my calling, just to make art and paint. Really just want to express that just to start off.
Well, we usually start in the beginning with your beginning, where you were born, where you grew up, where you went to school. Can you fill us in on that?
Sure. I'm a New York City native. I'm born in Brooklyn, New York. I'm like many other people. As a young kid, my parents were together for, a few years, but then they wound up splitting up. My family's kind of an interesting mixture of ethnicities. My mom is Jewish and my father is half Italian and half Puerto Rican. So in my family, it wasn't unusual when I'm with my grandmother and my aunts, everybody's speaking Spanish. And then when I'm with my mother's family, my grandmother's speaking Yiddish. And so I grew up really multicultural like that in New York, and New York is a really multicultural place also. It's an amazing social experiment, having all these different people who have to really live close to each other because they're all riding the subway and buses and so forth together. So I feel like having a background like that is really kind of helps me navigate in this, in this society. So I mean, that was kind of a cool thing. And I went to High School of Art and Design, which is a specialty high school in New York City that draws from all the 5 boroughs, and you have to take an entrance exam, kind of a portfolio review, basically, to be accepted. And also was accepted into High School of Music and Art, which became the High School of Performing Arts that the movie Fame was based on. So, but that high school was way uptown, and I lived in Brooklyn, out by Sheepshead Bay. So that was a longer ride on the subway. I didn't do that one. High School of Art and Design was cool, very cool. At the time, there was a lot of graffiti was very popular. And a lot of the writers, because a lot of the kids were from the Bronx, and there were a lot of graffiti writers and taggers that went to art and design. You kind of got immersed in that art form, And from there, I wound up going to Pratt Institute in Brooklyn as an art major. That was interesting because that allowed me to be exposed to like the great masters and, take museum trips and do things that I really didn't do so much on my own in high school. But in college, I wound up spending a lot of time in many of the museums, and that was part of the coursework also, So as a kid, I learned how to draw from comic books. I mean, I was a comic book artist, as a kid. And then there was a meeting of that style and the graffiti style, and then that met the kind of like the old masters. And I was very impressed with artists like Vermeer and Rembrandt and Boucher and Fragonard, and there's a whole bunch of them that are just amazing painters. And I kind of that became a big influence, and it kind of meshed with, with what I was doing. And there was another guy, Frank Frazetta, who was a fantasy artist in the 70s and 80s. He was a fantastic illustrator. And when I would bring him up at Pratt, the teachers would like poo-poo, like, Fragonard, he's not, Frazetta, he's not, he's not really. But, that's just generational, I guess. But yeah, so that kind of that blending of all these influences kind of started to kind of direct me in a certain trajectory is where, I might eventually go artistically.
And that was through your education, right? When you were learning going to the art museums, it's from, your school was telling you to go, or you were just so...
School, it was part of our coursework. It was part of because sometimes we would go as a group, and sometimes, you'd have to go and research different, And then I really started to like, there's a museum in New York called the Frick Collection. It's on Fifth Avenue and 79th Street. I don't know if you've ever been there. If you ever go to New York and it's a beautiful little museum. It was a mansion. It was someone's home. And it's just a great museum, just great. And you could see everything and not exhausted afterwards. But yeah, that was through through my exposure. I didn't wind up finishing college because it was the late 70s and 80s, early 80s, and you know how that is. So
wow, that's a great. I read about everything that you just said, and I thought, how did this all get together at the same time? Well, that explains it.
No, I was fortunate in that respect. But the thing is, I was coming out of school, and I didn't really have any real world skills. So, I was in my early 20s, and I started to I did all kinds of odd jobs for a while. I drove cars. I did delivery services. I did all kinds of stuff. I started to there's a big apparel industry in New York City. I started to work with some apparel companies doing designs and illustrations for them to be silk screened and for embroideries and so forth. And I started to be able to do some commercial art as a young artist, which was cool,
Well, you were in the right town, weren't you?
Yeah, exactly. I've worked with many, many people in Florida. I've taught many people over the years, thousands and thousands of kids and seniors through different programs and through my own nonprofit foundation. And I would tell them, well, if you want to be an artist, you should go to New York or Chicago or Los Angeles, because there's not really a lot of opportunities here. You could go do some graphic design here, maybe to put at Minuteman or something. I mean, you don't have the opportunities here to be an artist in many, many different areas like you do in New York.
High school, or traditionally elementary, junior high school, is kind of a community-based thing where, your home is relatively close, but the good news is you're accepted into that specialty high school. But I mean, how long was the commute? So you're 14, 15-year-old riding the subway to get to high school every day to and from, right?
Yeah. I was always fascinated by trains and heavy sculptures, heavy construction, heavy steel construction. So as a young kid, I became fascinated with the subways and the elevated structures and the bridges, because New York City is a city of great bridges, really great, probably the best in the world. There's no other city to compare with their bridges. I was very comfortable riding the subways because I used to ride the subways myself since I was maybe 10 years old. I would just get on the train and ride to the end and back. And you could look out the front window in those days, and then the tracks are fascinating, the switches, the tunnels, the whole thing. So yeah, going to school in Manhattan was good.
And do you remember which comic books were first the ones you read, or the ones you first trying to emulate with your art?
Oh, sure, yeah. It was usually, it was a bunch, but primarily starting off, it was Green Lantern. Because Green Lantern had Gil Kane as their penciler, and I think Sid Green was the inker. And Gil Kane had a unique way of drawing his anatomy, and it was really compelling to me. So I just used to try to copy Gil Kane's style a little bit. And this guy was an awesome illustrator. And then it was on to many other, Fantastic Four, and some DC, some Marvel, like Fantastic Four, Hulk, Spider-Man. Johnny Romita did Spider-Man. Steve Ditko did Spider-Man. Great illustrators. And the thing that I love about the comics, and even now as an adult looking back, is like the illustrators, the artists are so understated and so underappreciated, and they're fantastic artists. I mean, they would stage scenes with cities and perspective and buildings and cars, and then the superheroes, the anatomy of the superhero fighting, and it was like, it was storyboarding, but very detailed, highly detailed. And guys like Jack Kirby and John Buscema, and there's a whole bunch of them. Neil Adams, back from when I used to read, just awesome artists. Wow, just so impressed by them.
Yeah, it reminds me a little, what you're describing reminds me a little bit of like when we watch a movie. We're so into the story and the characters and their backstories. But what you don't realize is the effort that goes, say, into the audio soundtrack to make it sound realistic or to create an emotion or have you understand where they're at. And I think kind of a similar thing applies to what you're talking about is you're probably reading pane by pane in the comic book, what's happening to the superhero, what's he going to do now? But it's really comes to life through that illustration then. Absolutely.
In fact, in that business, you're supposed to be able to tell the story without any dialogue, if you know what I mean. Like that is kind of another one of my favorite characters was the Silver Surfer. And I think John Buscema did that one, drew that one. A few other people. Jack Kirby did him when he was with the Fantastic Four. And that's a guy, if you're not familiar with the Silver Surfer, he rides through space on kind of like a surfboard. And he's like a cosmic being. And, when he spouts like Shakespeare-esque kind of dialogue, and he's suffering on a certain level because he was taken from his planet and so a very interesting character and a lot of depth for a comic book, a lot of character development, but he also had fantastic powers also.
So after all the great experience in New York, then how do you make your way to Florida?
I wound up getting married to my wife is an artist as well, Wendy White. She's also very well known and she's a playwright and also a movie producer and director. But we met at a gallery in the East Village of Manhattan, probably late 90s. I don't know, one thing led to another. We wound up kind of going out and, I wound up like moving in with her. She lived in New Jersey. We lived in Jersey for a couple of years in like very late 90s, early 2000s. And my mom had moved to Florida in 1987. She moved to Pembroke Pines in Broward County. And so, we used to go down. I used to go down to Florida. I always liked Florida because I'm a palm enthusiast. And I have a history of growing palms in Brooklyn, for years. Like, it's a crazy thing. I know. And so I used to go down to Florida, visit my mom, go to Fairchild Tropical Garden in Miami, bring back seeds to New York and sprout them, because palms are relatively easy to grow. And I'd have them in my house in Brooklyn, like floor to ceiling, all kinds of palms. So that's just a little bit of a side thing. But we're visiting my mom in December. I remember very well, December of 1998. We came down to visit my mom. We didn't really want to stay at her house because it's tight, and we just got a hotel. We got a hotel at Federal Highway and Commercial Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale. And I said to my wife, there's probably a beach. I think the beach is close to here. And it really is close to there. It's a mile down Commercial Boulevard and to a town called Lauderdale by the Sea. And we went out to dinner and we're like, man, it's so nice here. Like, we should live here. And I remember we said that. And a year and a half later, we moved. We packed up the truck and we moved to Lauderdale by the Sea. And it was one of the best things we've ever done.
And that was the early 2000s.
That was 2001, right? 2.5 months before 9/11. So we missed 9/11 and all of that, and which was, that started us off in Florida. And
And then from Lauderdale by the Sea, how did you discover then Pine Island?
One thing that just to a little more context, when we were when we were thinking about moving to Florida, we kind of planning it for like a year, and one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to have our own art gallery, like a storefront. And so when we got to Lauderdale by the Sea, we found a storefront right in town and rented that. And that became our studio and gallery. So that turned out to be a really cool thing because then we got to know all the people in the town and so forth. And, we'd be out painting on location, doing all kinds of things. So spent several years doing that. We lived in Lauderdale by the Sea for about 16 years. In 2007, I saw an ad on TV late at night for you can buy a house. We were in a condo. And, I don't know if you've ever lived in a condo. So we were in a condo facing the ocean. It was beautiful. We were on the 14th floor. It was amazing. Like I can never leave here. How do you ever leave this place? The sea breeze is coming in. But the condo can get a little intense sometimes because there's the board and everybody's talking and they all want to know your business. And so I saw this ad on TV one night late. You can buy a house on an acre of land for $200,000 in a place called Pine Island. And I was like, really? That seems like a pretty good deal to me. Acre of land, I could grow my palm trees, And the good thing about Pine Island, it was southerly enough and has a favorable microclimate. It's probably classified 10B in the growing zone, which is the same as East Coast Florida, even though it's a little cooler in the winter. So it's a good place to grow all the stuff I like. So we started coming to Pine Island in 2007 just for visits, looking at homes. We just would come and just spend a weekend or so. And we did that. I think it was, we wound up finding a cute place about 8-9 years ago. We wound up making the move, taking the plunge. We sold the condo and we were over here around 2016. And that's how we wound up over here.
And it was an art community.
And there is an art community here. When we were on the East Coast, we were in Miami. After we had our space in town in Lauderdale by the Sea, but then we got involved with Wynwood, which is the art district in Miami, and we were in Wynwood for many years. So we had a really big art community. We were exhibiting. We'd do all kinds of stuff there. So coming here, we're going to a much smaller art community. And that's kind of one of the reasons that propelled me into doing public art, So, but it's nice to have a little land,
Mm-hmm.
Nice to have we have about 1.5 acres. We're on a huge lake. So the lake has now replaced the ocean, if that's possible.
Your style is you have to say your styles because you have so many styles, right? I was reading about it. How did that work then doing murals? When did the murals first start?
I think I did the first mural. Someone suggested to me or whatever that I should contact the Fort Myers Mural Society. And so I got in touch with the owner, Shari, and that was around 2018. And I really hadn't done I did like a couple of murals when I was much younger, but it wasn't anything that serious, She found a little project for me in Dunbar, in Fort Myers, in a church. And I wound up doing that, and it worked out well. And that's kind of how it started, But then it took a while for it to really pick up to where it's, became like relatively busy.
Do you like being outside? Or I know you do it inside. I've seen some inside of your work, but a lot of outside. Do you enjoy being out there?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, it's like, it's a give and take. Cause like you're outside, I could be a little messier. I could shake my brushes out. If I spill something, it's not the end of the world. I'm a little messy sometimes. And, when you're inside, you have to be careful, but being outside also, you deal with the elements. And I painted many times in the heat and it gets to you. It can be tough. I did the mural in Matt Lachey on someone's home a couple of summers ago. It was brutal. The one I did on Sweeney's soap shop, that was in August. It was, forget it. It was, but like what you learn to do when you're working on public art is you learn to block things out. Oftentimes you're in uncomfortable situations. You're in a place where it's really noisy. I had one project where they were jackhammering right next to me and there's cars like right under me and I just block it out. So it really does help you, I think, as an artist to increase your focus, to be able to have that experience. Hopefully
there's a palm tree or two over you when you're working. Wouldn't that be ideal?
Yeah, if possible. Yeah, it's like all south-facing walls.
Oh, no.
Always south-facing walls. No, not really, but it seems like it, yeah.
And I noticed, too, with Fort Myers, you said there's a relationship with the Mural Society.
Yes.
There was a convention bureau approached you about doing murals.
Oh, the Lee County Visitor and Convention. VCB, yeah.
And they wanted you to go into all the different places in Lee County.
They work with the Mural Society. So then the Mural Society, has me do. I don't do all of them. Other artists do some of them too. I just wound up doing a bunch of them in the last couple of years. So that's sponsored by the Lee County Visitor and Convention Bureau. Did a really big one, a 90-foot long wall in Cape Coral last 2024, like March of 2024. Did the side of the Eagle's Nest about 75 feet long with the kayaker and stuff. Yeah. And
it's beautiful. And I think the Captain CJ is there too.
Captain CJ.
You captured that perfectly.
No, thank you. And it's funny because the things that I paint for murals are rarely the types of things that I normally paint. I don't paint boats. I don't know. I had a few pictures of the shrimp boat and I kind of put it all together, and then I've looked at them as I go through Matt Lachey, you know what I mean? But so it's interesting that they're really just, I just look at them as just big paintings, they're just they're illustrations, which I find challenging and fun because a lot of times the scale is challenging. The compositions can be challenging in scale, so you really want to, but you want to put some eye candy in there. You want to make it, compelling, so.
Does the surface of the wall that you're working on change what you do in any way? Like more prep, less prep, more paint, less paint kind of?
Yeah.
Or can you incorporate, I don't know, texture into, or, because I know sometimes it's plain block or stuccoed or other materials that must impact you to some level.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. In fact, it affects the price of the job, If you get a heavily stuccoed wall, you're going to use more paint, let's face it. Because if you stretched all that out, it could be like twice as big, all kinds of nooks and crannies, things like that you got to dig into. A lot of times spraying is better than brush on heavily textured walls because it fills much easier, And so, that does make a difference. And it limits the kind of detail you can put down if it's really gnarly. Is
the spraying kind of a graffiti effect?
No. You can do beautiful art with the spray also. I don't use it that often because I don't, every now and then I'll do some effects with it, but I don't like the fumes kind of get me. And then I got to have all the equipment and the masks and I don't have all that stuff. You know what I mean? So that's,
And it can be windy.
Yeah, and if it's windy, exactly, and there are people who are really, really good at it, you know what I mean? And they've been doing it for years. And, so it's not something that I do that often, but I do it sometimes because it's great. It's great. I used to use airbrush years and years ago and you can get wonderful blended effects with the spray, with the airbrush that is very hard to achieve with a brush. On a flat canvas, you can do it, but on walls and things that are uneven, yeah.
Some of these took you over 3 weeks, didn't it? Just one wall?
Yeah. I mean, the one in Cape Coral took at least 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But like the way I look at it, I like going to work, I'm just going to work, that's it. I get used to the location. I find little places to eat and things like that,
Meet the people. You must have people standing around you asking questions.
Yeah, we do. In fact, one of the most asked questions while I'm painting is, are you painting that?
No.
Very often.
Oh, that's sweet.
But, the nice thing about doing public art also, one of the nice things is that a lot of times people don't get to see art being made. They go to a gallery or a museum and they see finished artwork, but they don't really see what it is, like how it's done, and there are people who just like to see how do you do it, which is cool. I totally get that. It's like I'm fascinated with writing music, people who create music and how they write that song that I've heard 1,000 times, what went into that, same kind of thing.
Yeah, no, you're right. You can't watch an artist at work.
Unless you go to the studio, which we had open studios, which is cool. And, people would come and hang out while you're working, but then you get distracted and you can't concentrate.
We did see that in Fort Myers and we just stopped and looked at them.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Exactly. It's interesting just to see how it's done. No question.
So you've mentioned, Pine Island, Cape Coral, Fort Myers. Have you permanently just done the work in Lee County or have you kind of expanded across Southwest Florida?
No, it probably is just like those locations, So it's just Cape Coral, Lehigh, I did a mural. Yeah. Sanibel, I did something for Visitor and Convention Bureau on the Sanibel, Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, yeah. Yes, okay.
Right when you come off the causeway.
You did in Fort Myers Beach.
Fort Myers Beach, Margaritaville.
Yes. With the seaplane.
Yes. Yeah. And I worked with another friend of mine who's a mural artist also, Eric Schlake. So we collaborated on that one.
That must be interesting to collaborate on a mural.
We've done a few. Like he did the seaplane, and he did the clouds and some stuff, and I did the beach and the palm trees. And so we kind of, and we've worked together on a few things. So it's, we kind of, we blend our styles nicely. Yeah, because sometimes you got a big project and it's a lot to do by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So, you want to, I had on the Pine Island one at the Eagle's Nest, the big one, I had a local friend of mine who's an artist, Doug Stewart, help with that also. He did some things on there also. He's listed, and he's on there. You go look at the artist. He's on there, Doug, and he's a good artist. He did a good job.
I did know. I went back and looked for the Indians you told me about.
Yes,
the tiki is kind of.
Yeah, the tiki. I know.
You get some shears out and cut that tiki back a little bit.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, man, they should have like, planned for that. Like they should have planned for not, yeah,
Oh, wow.
But hey, look. The thing is that's the nature of public art. You can go see, how's my mural doing? And maybe it got painted over.
Oh.
Because that's the nature of public art. There's a temporary nature to it, unlike you paint on a canvas and you hope that that's, going to hang in somebody's house.
Forever, right?
Forever,
Yeah.
exactly, until whatever. Public art is transitory.
Do you have any awards or grants that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I received... in the last couple of years, two grants from the city of Fort Myers, cultural grants. And I did a couple of things with that, but I did primarily the Dunbar Strong logo mural in Fort Myers. Okay. I had a really nice thing happen last spring. I had an article written about me. I was contacted by a French magazine because one of my specialties is skyscapes and clouds. And so I'd done a lot of cloud paintings, and I had been exhibited in Art Miami the year before. And I don't even know how they found me, but I think they found me from Miami. And so they wrote an article about me in a very, very nice magazine that's published out of Paris, Pratique des Arts. My French is terrible. I've been to France several times and I really not a word. But so I had a very nice interview and a beautiful article in the magazine as to how I paint the skyscapes and the clouds. And we went to the Cannes Film Festival last year. So we were in Cannes when the magazine came out. So I was able to pick up, copies of it on the spot, which was very cool. Yeah, really.
That's unreal.
Yeah, that was a nice thing. That was nice to see that. And yeah.
But they liked I think I read they liked your style, with how you did the clouds especially.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And you were there.
Yeah, I was there to get to see it on the stands, and it's a magazine that helps, people can read for reference as to how to do things, but people who are pretty serious about art. And the French also, they hold those things to be much more important and sacrosanct than I think we do in this country, which is that's one of the nice things about France.
Well, you just think of people with an easel out there painting.
Yeah.
You walk around Paris.
Yeah, exactly. Like in Montmartre, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first time I went over there, I was like, it's nice that they care about food. I mean, you can get a very good chocolate eclair almost anywhere, Whereas like here, what do we got? Publix, I don't go near that stuff, so,
Talk about the New Light Foundation.
Yeah.
Oh, so the New Light Foundation is also part of our dream and mission when we decided to move to Florida. We were going to, do an outreach whose mission is to, community outreach through the arts and education. Is basically it. Because I have a lot of experience and my wife, Wendy, has years of experience as an artist. What else can we do with it but share it with people? So we started when we got to Florida, we started calling up all kinds of organizations, youth organizations and churches and anywhere where there might be young people, because we wanted to really kind of focus on children initially. And we were lucky enough to get involved with the Kids in Distress organization. We would go and do these workshops. We didn't charge anything. This was a voluntary service. We do the workshops. We have like 50 kids.
Oh,
and we'd bring the supplies. We supplied everything. And we called that Art on Wheels. And our Art on Wheels mission still continues. We're doing it. We've done it here. We've done stuff here on this side.
So you're giving back, really, what to society. I mean, how sweet is that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and then the grants came through. I wound up hooking up with the city of Lauderhill in Broward County for about 10 years. I did, block grant funded art workshops, sometimes like 3 times a week.
Wow.
At different facilities and just for kids. And we just wanted to expose kids and also for seniors too, expose them to arts in a way that they may not be getting in school. Just really had a good time. I mean, just working with young people. And
did you ever see any success stories where some of the kids went on?
It's hard to say. I had kids that kind of matriculated with me for, several years. I can't say as to where they're at right now.
Mm-hmm.
I would always, we had, I can't say definitively that I've seen that,
mm-hmm.
but I know for a fact that there was many young people who just like to draw pictures. They just want to draw pictures. That's it. That's how I was. I just wanted to draw pictures. And that's how I still am. I just want to draw pictures. That's really it, so yeah.
I'm sure they really appreciate it and remember you.
For sure. And then we wound up moving here. We did some things with the Beacon of Hope for about 1.5 years. And we had some students that we're in touch with. I'm still in touch with people from Kids in Distress organization and, got very close with several of the young people. So yeah, and we work with a local church now in Cape Coral for grant funded classes.
Nice.
Yeah.
This has been wonderful. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about today that we might have missed?
No, I think, we've covered a lot of ground. Like I don't
we
have
have.
to talk. Yeah. Go home at night.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hang out late. I'm not partying somewhere and yet, been able to, to stay pretty busy. So I really, really appreciate people giving me the opportunity to make art.
That's wonderful. Well, we're going to put how to contact, your websites and Facebook page, Instagram. We'll put all that in our posts so people know how to contact you.
Sure.
And find your work.
Great.
So,
yeah, that's great.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much for coming today.
Oh, my pleasure.
It's been great.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. You guys are awesome.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
We hope you enjoyed our Pine Island Experience podcast. If you have any ideas for us, people to interview, or any comments, please feel free to email them to us at pineislandexperience@gmail.com. That's pineislandexperience, all one word, @gmail.com. Don't forget to like us, and you may subscribe to this podcast using all the major catchers like Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Thanks again for listening, and remember, island life is a constant vacation. We'll see you on the next podcast.